So as you mentioned, the federal government's now considering joining airstrikes on Islamic State militants in Iraq. But just as they're doing that, a new report is urging Australia to invest more in the Australia-US alliance and to invest more money in its own defence. With us now from Sydney is the Chief Executive Officer of the US Studies Centre, Bates Gill. Bates Gill, good morning.
Hi, Virginia.
We'll talk just in a moment. There's some key extracts from this report, which has taken quite some time to put together, talking about where the alliance needs to go next. Leaving aside the moral obligation of any powerful nation, the United States, Australia included, to do something when they see human rights abuses occurring in other countries. Whenever we discuss in Australia the idea of joining with the US alliance to engage in some military action, it causes great angst to a lot of Australians, and we're seen by some to be following in the shadow, to be hanging onto the coattails of the United States. What's your response to that often made criticism?
Well, I think one of the important things we learned in this three-year process of the Alliance 21 program was that while there is a very important defense and security relationship between the United States and Australia, one which has brought Australia great benefit, what's really important in this ties between the two countries is the much more comprehensive set of mutually shared interests which really underpin and are the foundation of the defense relationship. What Australians often don't seem to appreciate, as often as I think they should, for example, is that the United States and Australia have this remarkable economic relationship, over $1 trillion of bilateral investment. The United States is the largest, by far the largest investor in Australia. And one of the important results of that, of course, is the capital which has flowed into Australia's energy sector and has helped fuel the resource boom which Australians and Asians and Americans have so greatly benefited from. So the point here is that yes, the defense relationship is key. Concerns are important there. But what we're really talking about is not a sort of blind defense relationship between Australia and the United States, but one rather that's based on very, very strong mutual interests across a range of issues.
Although if I read the extract of the report correctly here, defence really does seem to be the key priority. It's certainly put as number one, alongside trade, energy security and the rapid changes in Asia. And one key point that's made in the report is that Australia is investing considerably less than the United States in defence as a percentage of gross domestic product. That's created an imbalance in the alliance, your report says. How do you imagine Australia might address that when we're talking here in a time of cutbacks on virtually every single front?
Well, what we note there is that, as you said, on the basis of a per capita calculation, Australia for many, many years has invested less in defense. And of course the United States has been in a position to invest more.
But that's always going to be the case, isn't it?
Well, it probably would be by and large, but as we know, both the previous government and the current government even more strongly has pledged to increase Australia's contribution to defense development upwards of, say, 2% as a proportion of GDP. And this, again, should not simply be seen as somehow a contribution to American interests. What Australia is able to do, as for example in the Middle East today, in the Ukraine some months ago, in contributing to search for the lost Malaysian aircraft and other examples, is in part arising from the great relationship and interoperability and cooperation which the U.S.-Australia Defense Alliance represents. This is in Australian national interests.
But returning to my first question, though, about what's being considered by Cabinet at the moment, and Australia actually formally joining in with the military action there in Iraq against the so-called Islamic State. Do you understand the concerns of some Australians, as it's been expressed in the media, letters to the editor and elsewhere, that if the mission and the vision of what success looks like in this mission is not concretely and completely put and understood before we go in, that causes some people a great deal of concern? Are you concerned that that mission has not been totally defined?
Well, I feel a bit uncomfortable speaking for Australians. I can say that these concerns are obviously a part of, I would say, the publics of nearly all the coalition members that are taking part in this initiative. There is a great deal of uncertainty about the future, about how we are going to be able to try and address the threats which are posed not only in the Middle East, but extended from there into our own domestic constituencies coming from the Islamic State. Great uncertainty, there's no doubt about that. But I think there's a lot to be gained from addressing these more directly, from joining with an international coalition to try and deal with it, work closely with one another. There's hardly another stronger partnership politically, economically, and in defense-related affairs than that between the United States and Australia today.
As I mentioned, the rapid changes in Asia is one of the key points looked at and analysed in this report. How do you think that Australia and the United States should be dealing with and responding to the push by people in Hong Kong as they're peacefully protesting for true government representation and true voting franchise there? What do you think Australia and US, or how do you think they should be responding to that?
Well, we don't address, obviously, the current situation in Hong Kong specifically because it's so recently arisen. But I think we could say, obviously, that what is in the interest of both the United States and Australia is a continued relatively peaceful and prosperous Asian region. And the United States and Australia make enormous contributions to that, especially through the economic relationship which we share in providing energy, providing agricultural resources, providing investment, technology, capital into the Asia region, which helps sustain what has been a remarkable period of peace and stability. If you relate that to the Hong Kong situation, then I think clearly it is what we've already seen both of our governments state, and that is that the expectation, the hope, that these issues in Hong Kong will be peaceably resolved, and that China would continue to grant the level of autonomy for Hong Kong, which is expected.
Bates Gill, we'll leave our discussion there, but good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.